Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on our contact log feature. Before we dive into our contact log, we'll talk about managing the contact log, configuring it, and keeping track of all of those points of contact that you have with members and non-members. We'll get into a little bit of housekeeping. All of your phones have been muted and all of your mics have been muted. So if you have any questions, just feel free to enter them into the chat window so you don't have to hold your questions to the end. Ask them as they come to you. A recording of this webinar will be available within a couple of days on our YouTube channel. And a listing of all of our recorded webinars can be found by going to our website, clubexpress.com, visiting the Cool Stuff option on the menu, and visiting the Webinars tab on the left-hand side, as well as a listing of all of those recently recorded webinars. We also have added a calendar feature to our website, which allows you to view all of the upcoming webinars that we have scheduled, register for them, and a couple of benefits of registering for the webinars in advance. You are able to submit questions. So if there are things that are related to the webinar topic that you would like to have demonstrated, things that are burning questions for you, just submit those with your registration. That way we can include them in the webinar. The webinar registration also includes a couple of helpful handouts that go through the functions that we'll talk about in that particular session. And of course, in addition to our great webinars, we also have a library of video tutorials. Our tutorials are a little shorter, a little more succinct, and they're also available on the Cool Stuff page under video tutorials. And of course, while you're watching one of our great tutorials or our really helpful webinars, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribing to our YouTube channel means that you will get updates whenever we publish a new tutorial or webinar. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and click the bell so that you get notified whenever we upload a new video. And finally, we love reviews. If you're using ClubExpress, and of course, if you are enjoying using ClubExpress, we would love to hear from you. So visit clubexpress.com/reviews and leave us a review on any of the sites that you see listed. In today's webinar, we are going to talk about the contact log. Now, the contact log is an extra cost feature that's available for a one-time fee of $1,000, and it functions as a CRM or customer relationship manager for your organization. Whether you're a nonprofit that's keeping records of donors or sponsor interest, if you're a professional association keeping track of people who are interested in speaking at events or leading seminars with your organization, or maybe you're a swimming club keeping track of who might be teaching swim lessons, the contact log can be helpful for you. You're able to manage and configure contact categories, so the nature of the contact, create follow-up entries, and manage responsible staffers or the folks who are responsible for actually following up on those points of contact. Now, in our demonstration today, we are going to go through setup. We're going to categorize your contact types, set up those responsible staffers, those people that are helping you out, add contact log entries, and then we'll also go through some tips and tricks on how to manage access to the contact log, how you can set up some internal best practices, and how you might manage those contacts within your organization. I'm logged in as an administrator, and I'm going to navigate to the control panel because I'm an admin. And today I'm going to go into the People Manager because while the contact log is its own module, it doesn't have a standalone link like the other modules that you might be used to. It's located in the People Manager. This is actually important for a couple of reasons. So one, it's super helpful for folks who are managing a lot of duties and tasks at once. You are likely dealing with members and non-members, member and non-member contacts frequently, and it's convenient to have the contact log in the same space. Another thing to think about is that anyone who you might want to use the contact log would need to have access to the People Manager. Now, if giving folks access to the People Manager makes you a little nervous, just stick around because we have a couple of tips that will help you out. We've moved into our People Manager. And again, our People Manager, of course, is your member and non-member database rolled into one. When you've activated the contact log, you're going to see a couple of additional things. Right now, I am just looking at my list of members. We can see that I'm viewing members only, but don't forget that the contact log can be used for non-members as well. When I'm looking at members, I see an additional icon in that maintain column. This is our contact log icon. And of course, we're going to come back to actually using that contact log icon. But let's take a look at what it looks like for non-members, because remember, our view in the People Manager is a little bit different between members and non-members. So at the very top, if I select non-members and I hit search one more time, instead of having that additional icon, we have put the contact log option in that extra little menu that's included with your non-member contacts, and the option is called log. Now, the options are same for both members and non-members. You can create the same type of entries for both. They're just found in a couple of different places. So again, remembering that you have the same options for members and non-members. Now, like a lot of features within ClubExpress, this isn't the only way to manage your contact entries. This is the way that you might manage entries if you know who you're looking for and you really just want to go in and quickly add or edit a contact for one specific person because you're looking at that specific member right within your search results or non-member in the case of my view now. Now, before we get into actually using the log, let's see how else we can access the contact log when it comes time to follow up on these entries. So instead of searching for each individual that you've made an entry for by searching through your member or your non-member database, let's take a look at our options at the top of our screen here. Under member options, again, because we have enabled the contact log, we see an option for contact log. And we have the same option available under non-member options as well. So the contact log is separated between members and non-members, but again, you have the same features available for both. Those spaces are going to allow you to see all of your contact log entries. So that's how you would access those items in general. We're going to go into detail in a moment, but first let's take a look at adding a contact entry, and then we'll go back and take a look at that entry. I'm taking a look at non-members right now. The options are going to be the same. So adding a contact log entry is going to look the same no matter if I'm demonstrating it as a member or a non-member. I am going to select log. And right away, I'm taken to a contact log screen for that particular person that I've decided to add an entry for. At the very top, I can search through all of the contact points for that specific person. I can add a new contact log entry, and I can export all of those entries into a CSV file as an export. So let's add an entry and see what that process looks like. I'm going to select Add Contact Log Entry, and I'm faced with my Add Edit Contact Log Entry screen. You've seen a lot of these really similar screens before. If you've used ClubExpress before, they're very simple pop-up windows. All you're doing is just filling in a handful of fields. So at the top of the screen, I can see the name of the person I'm adding the entry for and my log date. That initial log date is going to automatically populate with today's date. But of course, I can change that. Then I can add a follow-up date. The follow-up date is optional. I am going to select a future date as my follow-up date. And then next, I configure my contact type. So my contact type is essentially how did this point of contact occur? Now, you'll see that all of these are pretty standard. These are ones that are included with your site. And included in those, I see a handful of future contact options. Not only can you use this to record an email or a phone call that you've already made, you can essentially use it to set reminders for yourself if you're the person managing the contact log. And you can also use it to assign tasks to other people. So you can say, I want to create this contact log entry, say it's for a future contact, assign it to someone else to follow up on, and it acts as a nice little reminder for yourself. So in this case, I am going to say that I sent an email to Myrna, and the contact category is the next item that you would touch. So the contact category, we love our categories at ClubExpress. These categories are really telling you what that contact point was about. Now, of course, you can configure your own categories. We do have built-in system categories that cover most of those options. And the Chicago Association of Financial Planners has added a series of their own contact categories. In this case, I've contacted Myrna because she would like to be an event sponsor. Next, I'm going to enter in a subject line for Myrna. Now, the subject line is going to be visible right off the bat when you're looking at those individual contact log entries, whether you're just looking at Myrna's or whether you're looking at everyone's. So try and make the subject line a little bit more helpful, a little bit descriptive. I am going to say wants to be an event sponsor. Maybe I have a specific event in mind. I can input that in the subject line as well. And then we have our description. So the description is where you're going to be entering in the actual notes about that contact point. So no matter who is creating that contact log entry, you can add notes initially. You can leave that blank and save those notes for every person who follows up with that contact log entry. I'm going to say that I emailed Myrna and let her know about our upcoming events so that she can choose the one that she'd actually like to sponsor. So perhaps then I want to give some instructions as to what the next point of contact would be like. So maybe then I want to say, follow up and see if she's interested. So all of that description is going to be visible, not just the person who created that contact log entry, but to anyone who decides to open it and follow up with it in the future. So next up, we have our contact log entry status. If you intend to follow up on it, make sure you leave that status set as open. And if the contact point just needs to be recorded and there's no follow up, you can label it closed, and then it won't appear in your list of open contact log entries. Next up is your priority. This is internal priority, of course, and keep in mind that you are able to search by priority level. So if you really want folks to focus on those urgent priority contact points, make sure that you are marking those as urgent. I'm going to say that this is relatively low priority. We don't need Myrna to be a sponsor. We're going to follow up with her if we can. And then finally, we have our responsible staffers. So assigning a responsible staffer is really just choosing the person who's tasked with following up with that member or non-member from a list of responsible staffers. Now, of course, we'll show you how you get that list, who you can add to that list. But for now, I am going to say that I'd like Colleen to follow up with Myrna. I'll go ahead and save that contact log entry. And now I can see that I have my entry. I have the date that I'm supposed to follow up with that entry on. And let's take a look back in the People Manager and see what all of those contact log entries look like, not just when you're looking at it from the perspective of one member or non-member. Let's take a look at all of those entries. So instead of taking a look at those non-member entries, we'll take a look at member entries as well. They're going to look the same. All of the options are going to be the same. I am in member options. Again, I'm still in the People Manager, and I am going to select contact log. Right away, our screen looks a little bit similar to the contact log entries that we were looking at for a single person. The only difference is that now you're looking at multiple entries at one time. Like all of our modules and databases, we have a search feature at the very top of your screen. Within the search feature, you can search by status of the contact log entry. So you can separate open and closed contact log entries, view both at the same time. Let's take a look at our open entries first. I'll select open contacts and search. I can also search by my start and finish dates. I can separate them out by the responsible staffer. Again, search by categories and priority level. Now, when I'm looking at my search results, on the left-hand side, I can see the member's name along with some quick contact info. So if I just select Vaughn Benson, I can see a snippet of contact info along with an email address so that I can quickly reach out to Vaughn if I need to. I have the contact log entry date, the date that the log entry was created. Next to that, we'll see that follow-up date that we configured, followed by the last time that entry may have been edited. So next up, we have our subject line. So you see that some of our subject lines have a notation in front of them, CLFU. That just means that we've configured a follow-up date for that particular contact log entry. Now, if you don't configure a follow-up date, remember that follow-up date is optional. If you don't configure a follow-up date, you won't see that notation in your subject line. It just lets you know that you need to follow up with that entry. Next, of course, you see those responsible staffers. Again, those are the people that you've selected from your list of responsible staffers for that particular entry. We see the type of entry that we've made as well as that category. So remember, those categories are what we've configured. The status of those entries, we're only looking at open entries currently. The priority of those entries. And again, I can always use my search feature at the very top to filter by priority. I can also sort by priority as well. And then finally, we have our maintain options. So within our maintain options, that's where you can, one, edit the contact log feature that you have and also delete that contact log entry. Now, let's take a look at what we're seeing at the very top of our screen before we move on to actually managing those contact log entries. So on the right-hand side, like a lot of our other modules and features, these are the buttons that you're going to use to configure the contact log and manage those contact log entries. So at the very top, we have those contact categories. Again, we love categories. So if I select contact categories, I see a couple of things. I see at the very top of my list those system categories that have been created for me. Those are those ClubExpress system categories. These are just popular contact category types that we've added to make your job a little bit easier so that if you wanted to, you could use the module straight out of the box. You can also add your own contact categories if the categories that we've created just don't suit your needs. So some of the categories that we've added, we do have a category for donation that's already been created, but maybe we want categories for people who are interested in speaking, major donors. Maybe we want to separate out those high-end donors from the lower tiered donors so we can follow up with them on a different schedule. If we add a contact category, all we're doing is just entering in the name of that contact category. And then it appears in the drop-down list of category types that we can choose from when we are creating that contact log entry. I'll go back into my contact log. Next up, let's talk about responsible staffers. We can create that group of responsible staffers. Again, these are the folks that you're assigning entries to for follow-up. You're choosing these staffers from your member database. All I'm looking at is a list of my current responsible staffers. I can select the delete icon to remove a staffer if I need to. And of course, to add a responsible staffer, I just select add responsible staffer. And then I use my familiar member selector to choose a member from my organization to add to the list of people that I would like to be responsible for following up on these contact log entries. It's important to note that you can delete a responsible staffer. It won't delete them from your member database. It won't delete any of the contact log entries that they have been assigned to. All it will do is just remove them from the list of responsible staffers. It will remove their name from the contact log entry so that you would have to reassign that entry to someone else, but it won't get rid of anything else. We'll go back one screen here, back into that contact log. The next button that we have is the Add Contact Log Entry button. So if I select this, you're seeing the exact same screen that you would have seen if you had added a contact log entry from the People Manager screen. When we were adding Myrna's contact log entry, we selected that log button, or if we were adding an entry for a member, we would have selected that contact log icon. And we would have been faced with the exact same pop-up. The only difference is that because we are in the general contact log now, not for a specific person, we just have to choose that person's name at the very top of our screen. So because I am in the contact log for members, I am choosing at the very top from my member database. And again, I'm faced with that member selector where I'm just choosing someone from my database. The non-member contact log is going to be the exact same. The only difference is that you're parsing through non-members in order to pull out that particular entry. Let's pop right back into the People Manager. And we'll take a look at our non-member options, and we'll just show that that contact log option is the exact same even for non-members. So we see that we have a handful of contact entries that we've entered for non-members. We have the same options. Now, we do have those contact categories and responsible staffers available in both sides of the contact log. It is important to note that the contact categories will carry to both the member and non-member because it's the same module. So when you add a contact category, let's say if you're looking at the contact log for non-members, don't worry, that category will be available for every contact log entry that you create. And the same is true with those responsible staffers. So no matter where you add those responsible staffers or where you add those contact categories, they're going to be available for all of your members and non-members. Let's talk about reports and exports. So, of course, we have several reports that are available. These reports are going to be really helpful to you just so that you can get a general to-do list of, what you need to follow up on. We also have exports that are available. So that export is going to allow you to export closed contact log entries from a date range. I mentioned at the top of our webinar that we had a couple of options for folks that might want to have others manage those contact log entries if they didn't want them to have access to the people manager. So let's talk about that briefly. Some of the options that you might have for setup tips. Access. Let's say that you don't want your members to have access to the people manager. Well, a great way to get around that is by giving them access to, instead of the people manager, the people lookup function. If you aren't too keen on giving members or multiple members access to the people manager, because again, remember, there are a lot of other things that folks can do through the people manager. They'll be able to access additional contact information for those members. They'll be able to see event registration history, transaction history. We understand that you might not be really keen on giving them access to that, but they might still need to be able to access some contact information for members and non-members. Consider giving them access to the people lookup function. The people lookup function is essentially a read-only version of the people manager. It gives folks access to the same search features that you see in the people manager. You can still search through members and non-members. I can still use all of those really great filters that are included in the people manager and all of those sorting options as well. But you'll see here that I'm not seeing any of those extra options in that maintain column. I can't access anyone's profile. I can't access any of their transaction history. I can take a look at George Abba and I can view some quick contact information about George. So if I'm following up on a contact log entry, I can go ahead and quickly take a look at George's contact info, make a phone call to him, or even use that handy email icon to quickly send an email to George. Now, that particular email icon, whether it's in the people manager or the people lookup function, is going to open up an email message using the email provider on your device. So if I select this icon now, my default email provider on my laptop is just Outlook. So it's going to open up a blank Outlook message with George's email address. So we've given all of those responsible staffers, perhaps coordinator, access to the people lookup function. Again, if you're not comfortable with giving them access to the people manager, how else are they going to manage those contact log entries? Well, because they wouldn't have access to the people manager, they wouldn't have access to the actual contact log. So consider that you might have one person who already has access to the people manager, likely a membership director or some other officer in your organization, creating those initial contact log entries, assigning them to responsible staffers, and the way that you would disseminate that information to your responsible staffers would just be running a report. Let's take a look again at our member options and our contact log. Under reports, I am going to run a report for all of my open log entries by member and non-member. I'll go ahead and select next. And normally when I run reports personally, I run them as an HTML output. That is my personal favorite. It just opens up my report in a new tab in my browser. If I am looking to just quickly get some information, that's my go-to. I don't have to open up a download. I don't have to open up another application. I can just keep working in my browser and I don't have to switch gears. But in this case, I really do want that CSV output. I want to be able to go through and sort through all of those contact entries that I have. So I've selected CSV output. I'm going to go ahead and run my report. It's going to download into my download file. I'll open that report up. And now I can see that I have a list of all of those open contact log entries. I've just expanded that to show all of my information here. So I can see again that the category, the subject line on the right-hand side, I can see all of that extra information, all of those descriptions that have been entered. Now, what I want to do though is, I have a couple of options. This is an internal practice. So depending on how you want to handle this is entirely up to you. I can decide that I want to just send this report out to every single person who is a responsible staffer. I'm not going to parse through it. I'm just going to send the report to everyone, and everyone knows how to find their own name in the list so they can go ahead and manage those entries. And then perhaps part of your internal process is asking them to update the description line of the spreadsheet, send it back to you. And then all you have to do is just copy and paste those into those entries. Whatever your internal process is, they can manage it from the report. And of course, if you want to parse out all of the individual entries, you can just go through and sort through all of the information or filter through all of the information right within Excel. If I select my header line that has all of those categories, I can just select data and then select the filter option within Excel. And now I get a filter option right above all of those names. So I can select each individual name. So let's say that I'd like to just show Colleen's contact log entries. And now I can quickly see all of the entries that Colleen is responsible for. I can send these just to Colleen, maybe in an email, and ask her to follow up on them quickly. Once your responsible staffers receive that information, they can log into their account on your website. They'll have access to either the people manager or the people lookup function, and they'll be able to manage those entries on their own, manage those contacts on their own. Now, another couple of points that I want to touch on. So let's say that you are within the people manager and perhaps you drop a member. Now, of course, there are two ways to drop a member. One of them is by finding that particular member in your member list, choosing the member status. Remember that those member statuses are actually links that you can use. So I can select the member status. I can choose to drop that member. And then, of course, remember that you are selecting a drop reason that you would like to add to that particular member's account. And you might do this for a number of reasons. Maybe you have members who membership has expired and you'd like to drop them just to remove them from your database. Another option, of course, is if we scroll up under member options, we have the ability to drop expired members en masse. So that would be you saying, I want to drop all members whose membership expired on or before January 2019. Which helps clean up your database. Remember that even when you drop a member, they're still in your database. So you still have access to those contact log entries. And further, if we take a look again at one of our members here, you'll notice that we have the ability to not only drop those members, but also convert them to a non-member. So if you drop a member, those contact log entries don't go anywhere. And further, if you drop a member and convert them to a non-member, those contact log entries will follow them to their non-member side. So you won't lose those contact entries just because their status has changed within your database. And of course, if you're wondering why you might even bother converting a member to a non-member, well, consider when you send out a blast email newsletter. You likely choose a handful of tried and true distribution list options from that list of options that probably include active members in your database as well as non-members. But if you're only sending out that email to active members, you might be missing out on those dropped members. So if you want to keep even dropped members in the loop on what's going on in your organization, consider converting them to non-member status, because remember that you also have the ability to convert those non-members back. And finally, let's take a look at one more great little feature, and that's when you're adding a non-member to your database. At the top of my screen here, I've kind of been hanging out by the member and non-member options buttons, but let's take a look at what it looks like to add a non-member when I have that contact log enabled on my site. So I'll go ahead and select add non-member. I'm faced with that same add, edit, non-member screen that I'm used to seeing when I add an individual non-member or interested party to my database. I see that standard pop up. I can go ahead and input all of that same information. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom, I see an additional option to add a contact log entry. So if I select that, now my screen expands not just to include that original set of contact information, I get the full contact log option within my non-member setup screen. Because I have the contact log enabled, right when I meet that new sponsor, the new donor, the interested speaker, I can add them to the non-member database, scroll down, and at the same time create that contact log entry for that person. So it's a great way, to consider it two birds, one stone, less work for you. Those are the setup tips to consider. Remember, considering who has access to those items on your site. We talk a lot about access and site security. We do give you the tools to really parse out that access. You don't have to make everyone a full site administrator. You don't have to give folks access to your people manager in order to really utilize the contact log. You can still give them access to the people lookup function. You don't have to allow them to see everything behind the curtain. And then remember that you have those reports that are available to you. You do have the available exports. And as those bonus, remember that dropping expired members can help you clean up your database a little bit. And you do have the ability to convert those members to non-members. So remember that all of those contact log entries, you're never going to lose them. And of course, the same is true in the reverse. If you are converting a non-member into an active member within your database, all of those contact log entries are going to follow them as well. Devin, how are we doing on questions?
We're doing pretty good. We had a couple questions at the beginning that got answered that will probably turn into some notes to our developers. We did just get a question whether people can add their own contact types. It looks like we can't at the moment. I do believe we can add them individually if someone needs an extra contact type. That's also an improvement, would be to talk to our developers about adding an option for contact types to be locally controlled. We had someone ask about follow-up dates. Did it send a prompt to the responsible staffer, which right now it doesn't, but that's an interesting thing to talk about for improvement. And then also someone asked about bulk changing responsible staffers when a current responsible staffer is removed.
Okay, so that would be an interesting fix, the ability to not only change or delete the staffer, but also reassign all of those options. Those are great suggestions. Thanks, everyone, for all of the suggestions in our chat. We do really appreciate them.
Someone did just ask if we currently have the contact log tied into ad hoc reports. It's not currently tied into the ad hoc reporting tool, but it is on our list of, we are constantly adding fields to ad hoc reports, and contact log is one of the ones that we are currently working on.
Of course, if you are not sure what ad hoc reporting is, it's a wonderful feature that you can add to your website that allows you to create and run custom reports either whenever you'd like. You can also have reports run for you on a schedule and sent to you automatically. Ad hoc reporting is available to test out for everyone as a free trial on your site. If you're interested in what that entails, just go ahead and give our support team a call or visit our YouTube channel. And on our YouTube channel, search for ad hoc reporting, and you'll see all of our tutorials and webinars that we've done on the subject. I see that Lisa has a question. Do you have a limited coordinator rule for other modules like people lookup for the contact log? There are some of our features that have more limited coordinator rights. For example, if you take a look at custom pages. So with custom pages, that's one of the features that you can assign a coordinator to have access to all of your custom pages, or you can assign coordinator rights to an individual custom page. So they wouldn't have access to every page, just the pages that you give them access to. A couple of other features that work in the same way: events. So you can assign someone to be a coordinator for events or make them an event contact for a specific event. The same is true for photo albums. You can also assign essentially coordinator rights to specific items like a forum. We call those forum moderators, and blogs, and we call them blog authors. where they essentially have further rights than a regular member, someone to moderate a forum, someone to create a blog post, but they won't have access to everything. So those are a couple of items that we have more limited coordinator access available to. And of course, if there are other items that you're interested in, there are things that you have in mind that you would like to see rolled out as far as offering more limited coordinator access as opposed to access to everything, please send that to ideas@clubexpress.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next webinar.